Hey everybody, welcome to Fantasy R&R. This is your host Ryan, and this is our Fantasy Football Week 4 preview.
This is Fantasy with Rob and Ryan, Fantasy R&R.
Sadly, Rob will not be able to join us today. He is in Atlanta watching the Phillies and Braves series, so that'll be exciting for him. Rob, have a great time. I am rooting for Freed and Riley. I need them to come through this week for my Fantasy Baseball Championship. With that, let's get started on the Week 4 preview. Fantasy Boomers. Just like last week, this is simply the fantasy players I think will have a huge impact in the game, so let's get started.
Jaguars at Bengals.
You know, I got to go with Jamar Chase on this one. I think he is the offense at this point. I think he's been kind of undervalued and underestimated by fantasy managers going into this season because of that comment he made about the NCAA ball. This guy has actually been dropped 1.4% amongst ESPN teams in the last week. It makes no sense. He's got a touchdown in every game, 2 touchdowns in the last game. He's over 210 yards on the season already, already up to 11 receptions, about 20 targets. This dude's a speedster and he can catch the ball. I mean, this is one of those situations where he's going to go into Jacksonville. Their defense is absolutely terrible. Trevor's going to have trouble getting the ball going down the field, and they're going to turn it over a lot, and then they're going to switch possessions. Jamar Chase is going to come out there and get a bomb from Burrow. This is a rematch between T-Law and Burrow. It's going to be absolutely insane. Get Jamar Chase in your lineup. Don't even think twice. Start him all the time now.
Washington football team at Falcons.
Scary Terry McLaurin. This is a week he bounces back again, puts up another 20-plus point fantasy performance. Antonio Gibson has actually not been that effective as a running back. That last game, he only had 1 reception for 73 yards. It was that big play, burner down the field, but was averaging less than, 3 yards a carry for the remainder of that game. So this is going to be a situation where they're walking into Atlanta. They're going to be playing in the Dome. It's going to be very easy with that defense. And I think Terry McLaurin's going to put up big points no matter who the quarterback is, which it's going to be Heineke. Get Terry McLaurin back into your flex positions. Play him with confidence this week.
Texans at Bills.
Okay, so Josh Allen didn't have the greatest start to the fantasy season. First game, he's got a fumble. Second game, he's got a pick. Not a ton of fantasy points, but he's back in prime form. Week 3 against Washington. 358 yards passing, 4 touchdowns in the air, no turnovers, and he got 1 on the ground with 9 yards rushing total. Josh Allen's absolutely a lock for your QB1 all the time. He's going to have an insane game against the Houston Texans, who are running Davis Mills quarterback at the moment. It's just going to be a struggle. It's in Buffalo. Weather's already started to get cold up here in the Northeast, so I think Josh Allen's just going to have one of those monster games again. And if you've got the choice, like some people I've seen, who have Josh Allen and let's say, Russell Wilson at the same time on their team, go with Josh Allen this week. It's going to be an absolute bar burner. As far as Rob's take here, he's going to be out of office. His out of office take, Zach Moss. We know Singletary's been getting the ball, and it's actually been interesting to see just how productive he's been compared to years past. But I think it's going to be one of those situations here where I think Rob, what he's banking on is that Zach Moss is going to come in and vulture some of those touchdowns like we've been seeing him do. Devin Singletary is starting to fall behind Zach Moss in terms of snaps and production, even though Singletary started off the year pretty well. So Zach Moss, that's the take from Rob right there.
Lions at Bears.
At this point, I think it's clear that DeAndre Swift is less of a running back in the Barry Sanders sense and more of a dual threat weapon for the Lions. And this game is going to be absolutely insane for him. Going up against that abysmal Chicago team. I mean, the whole team looks bad at this point, and they're going to be just giving the ball back to the Lions over and over again, and it's going to be a slow grind. I don't think they're going to have Goff taking tons of chances, and if he does get some TDs through the air, they're going to start to rely back on DeAndre Swift. This is going to be an RB1 situation. Get DeAndre Swift into your lineup. If he's on your bench because you thought you had a better flex position, change that right now. It's going to be the Swift show.
Panthers at Cowboys.
All right, this one might be a little surprising for some people. Just allow me to explain why. Tony Pollard. I know that Ezekiel Elliott actually had a big game, but that game got out of hand against the Eagles. I don't think that's really indicative of the actual fantasy situation or the team's strategy going forward. I actually do think that you might see Pollard peppered into this one a little bit more often. Carolina has a tough defense, and they're going to be looking for Zeke that whole time. Pollard's going to be that sneaky play that they could send down the sideline and get a nice bubble screen to or something like that, pop off for a lot of yards on multiple receptions throughout the game. get him into your lineups as a flex, especially if you're one of those deep leagues where you're a little desperate. I think he's going to have a big fantasy impact in this game, especially against a Carolina team that's not going to have Christian McCaffrey, so they're going to be looking at Darnold the entire time. And, rookie Chuba Hubbard, we don't know what he can do yet. I think this is just going to be one of those things where once Dallas gets the ball back, it's going to be a slow grind, and Pollard's going to get a lot of action in this one.
Colts at Dolphins.
Oh, Gesicki. Mike Gesicki. So I started him week 1 and got a big fat donut from him. We've seen Tua go out. He's going to be on the IR for just a couple weeks, and Jacoby Brissett is not exactly playing lights out, but because of that, it's going to help. Gesicki was targeted 12 times in the last game against the Raiders and caught 10 of those for 86 yards. No touchdown, but I think that he's going to be utilized the same way. Devontae Parker and Waddle are going to have a little bit of struggle with Brissett. I mean, probably Parker more so than Waddle. But Gesicki's going to be looked to often for Jacoby Brissett to dump off the ball quick after a rollout like he usually does on other teams he's on. So get Mike Gesicki back into your lineups. Start him with confidence as a tight end 1 this week.
Browns at Vikings.
All right, don't know who this is? You will soon. Tyler Conklin. This guy's a tight end for the Minnesota Vikings. I think he's going to have a big game. He kind of had a big game last week, so I know it kind of feels like low-hanging fruit. But really, the Browns are going to have some trouble defending against tight ends. And with Irv Smith not being in the Minnesota Vikings lineup for the foreseeable futures, they've turned to other options. And Conklin looks like he's going to be a good play. The 2018 Combine, he actually performed really well. I think he was second amongst all tight ends, 4th in the broad jump. So he's got some athletic ability there. Dallas Goedert kind of overshadowed him in that draft, and that was, expected. So what we're seeing now, I mean, even Mark Andrews too, I believe was 2018. So Tyler Conklin's finally getting playing time, and he's going to be going up this Browns defense, and Kirk Cousins is actually going to have a little bit of trouble against the Browns. You want to know why? A guy named Myles Garrett's going to be rushing him all game. He's going to pressure Cousins. Cousins isn't great under pressure, and he's going to look to dump it off as soon as possible, and he's going to be looking at those short routes from Tyler Conklin. I'm thinking this guy gets 7 or 8 catches in this game, a little bit more than last time. Get him into your lineups for this week. You will be surprised.
Giants at Saints.
Okay, a lot of people are saying this isn't even an option for week 4, but they're wrong. Famous Jameis, this is his time to come back, swing those crab legs loud and proud. This is it. Jameis Winston's coming back. He put up a big fantasy game. Remember, this guy put up 5,000 yards and 30 TDs not too long ago. Started off the season with a bang, 5 TDs, no turnovers. Saw him come back down to earth against a tough Carolina defense, and then a competent Bill Belichick Patriots defense that was totally ready for him. But even that, Winston didn't turn over the ball. And he didn't turn over the ball week 1. As it stands right now, Winston has 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a touchdown on the ground. So 8 total touchdowns, 2 interceptions, no fumbles, all right? He's going up against the New York Giants, and he's at home in the Dome for the Saints. Everyone's saying New York Giants defense is pretty good. Stop it. Get some help. These guys are middle of the pack in every category all the time, and in fantasy, they're even worse. I think their position ranked like 24, 25 at the moment. This is actually the time for Winston to bounce back big. You're going to see Kamara torch this defense, and some of those plays are going to be dump-offs from Winston. Get Winston into your lineup if you need a streaming option this week. I promise you will not be disappointed.
Titans at Jets.
Okay, I'm actually not sure which one's the more low-hanging fruit here. Taking Derrick Henry in this matchup or the Titans D. I'm going to go Titans D because I like to be a little bold, and they have not been the greatest defense this season or the end of last season. Usually they're pretty solid, but they can give up some big plays and blow some big games at the wrong time. So Titans D has always kind of been average, middle of the pack, kind of like I was talking about with the Giants, but the Titans are a little better than that, even though for fantasy purposes they had a rough matchup against Kyler and then Russell Wilson. So I want to say, obviously, anybody that goes up against the Jets, you should be starting. Zach Wilson looks absolutely awful. He's a turnover machine. But on top of that, I think it's just going to be kind of a back and forth of Derrick Henry running the ball, running the clock down, and then the Jets struggling on offense right after that series. So the Titans could actually pull off a shutout here, just like Denver did last week. It's time to pick up the Titans and stream them.
Chiefs at Eagles.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Allow me to elaborate a little bit. Obviously, it's really easy to say Patrick Mahomes, Kelsey is going to torch this Eagles defense. What we saw with the Cowboys on Monday night, again, an anomaly, kind of a one-off that got out of hand because of a bad pass by Jalen Hurts. Even as much as I might have, we got some right last week, we got some wrong. Jalen Hurts was not exactly terrible, but he wasn't the fantasy star of that game by any means. And I'd love to pick him again for this one to torch an abysmal Chiefs defense. But I really just got to say, with what I saw with Ezekiel and Tony Pollard going ham on the Eagles are not prepared for that at all. And with another high-octane quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, mimicking what Dak Prescott could do to a double the degree, I think we're going to see that kind of back and forth of big passes from Mahomes and giant runs from Hilaire. And we saw Hilaire hit the 100 mark for the first time this season last week. If he stops the fumbling, this guy's going to go off in this game. I think you should just get him into your lineups. I'd love to pick this one for my game of the week, but I just can't do it. So let's move on to the next one.
Cardinals at Rams.
Cooper Kupp. I'm going to take the low-hanging fruit on this one. Me and Rob have been saying Matt Stafford's an incredible arm talent. We were excited when he went to the Rams. This is actually the #1 wide receiver in fantasy right now. He has 33 targets in 3 games. He has over 350 yards receiving, and he has 5 touchdowns. 2 of those games, he had 2 touchdowns each. Cooper Kupp is going to have no sign of slowing down at this point, and I was very high on him before the season started in one of the Yahoo leagues that I'm 3-0 in right now. I took him as a late-round flyer when no one won. I couldn't even believe it when I got him so late. Cooper Kupp is going to be massive for the rest of the year. So if you have him, it's not even a flex consideration. I mean, if you have 2 strong wide receivers, put him in those slots, and Cooper Kupp goes in your flex. Otherwise, you know you got to start this guy, even over players like Justin Jefferson this week. So get him into your lineups. And with that being said, this is actually going to be Rob's game of the week, his out-of-office game of the week. He thinks whoever wins this game is going to the Super Bowl. Cardinals, Rams, Kyler Murray versus Matt Stafford. We think Kyler's going to be MVP. We both agree on that one. I'm not sure if either of these teams get to the Super Bowl, but I definitely think both of them have a chance of being a playoff contender at the very least, and both of them might meet in the playoffs. I'm not sure if the Rams make it to the Super Bowl. I'm still not convinced, but they do look like a strong NFC candidate, so that's Rob's game of the week at this moment.
Seahawks at 49ers.
George Kittle. It's worth noting that he's questionable at the moment, and it's just from a sore calf, and this was back on Monday that they reported this, so I think George Kittle is going to be good to go. If he's good to go, I think he's going to be a huge asset in this game. They've obviously realized at this point that even like years past where they had multiple running backs, JaMychal Hasty and Jeff Jones Jr. and Raheem Mostert at the same time, and it's just back and forth, Tevin Coleman, this and that. Their running game just doesn't seem to be what everybody thinks it is. They don't move the ball very well on the ground consistently on a game-to-game basis. George Kittle has yet to record a touchdown this year, but in the last game he had 9 targets, 7 catches, 92 yards, and he's starting to pick up. So if Garoppolo comes in and plays like he did against the Packers, George Kittle will have a giant game this week against Seattle's terrible defense. Put George Kittle into your lineup, and he's going to put up those Kelsey, Mark Andrews numbers, Darren Waller numbers that we all know he can.
Ravens at Broncos.
Okay, so I missed it on the Marquise Brown thing last week. Couldn't have seen that coming. Marquise Brown is starting to have some drops. But now this opens up the door for something I've been expecting anyway. Rashad Bateman. Rashad Bateman is going to be your guy in this game if he plays. Rashad Bateman has been activated off the IR. He was originally expected to miss up to like 8 weeks, but he's practicing today. And I think that if he can get involved with the team's office, he's going to immediately implement him. And this dude was insane at Minnesota. He's got some one-handed catch highlights. Absolute monster. Went under the radar in a lot of fantasy redrafts and fantasy rookie dynasty drafts because he was injured and no one thought they'd be able to use him for a while. This was the #1 pick for the Ravens. I think pick 27th overall. This guy's got insane talent, runs a 4.4, excellent jumping ability, one-handed catches. I think he was averaging over 20 yards a catch in his second year. So this is just somebody who's going to make a giant difference for Lamar Jackson, especially if Marquise Brown is dropping the ball. Their running game is terrible right now. Tyson Williams, Devontae Freeman, they all look bad. I mean, like Tyson Williams, he had over 4 yards a carry, but they just didn't use him very much. So if that's going to keep flip-flopping, you're going to see an amount of looks and targets go to Rashad Bateman to make big plays for this Ravens offense. This is the time. Rashad Bateman, if you do play this week, you are going to be the biggest asset of fantasy in this game.
Steelers at Packers.
All right, this is a repeat, doing Najee Harris again. We called it last week. Najee Harris went off mostly in the receiving game, and that could be what continues to happen going forward. I never said that he was going to have a huge game just as a running back, just as a fantasy running back, and that's what's going on right now. Steelers have a bad O-line. We know this. They're going to play against the Packers, who are letting up 115 rushing yards a game, so Najee Harris could actually have some degree of success in the running game. And conversely, the Packers are going to have Aaron Jones, a superstar, going up against the Steelers, who are averaging 88 rushing yards per game. Obviously, some of the matchups tell the story about that, but we could see Aaron Jones potentially struggle in this game, and the Steelers be able to keep a different kind of pace using Najee Harris on a more consistent basis, both in the running game and the passing game. Najee Harris is their ultimate weapon at this point with the way Ben Roth is playing. Start Najee Harris, don't worry about it. If you got a guy like Saquon Barkley or anyone like that, and you don't know who to start, I'd say just go with Najee Harris. He's just in the better position at this point.
Buccaneers at Patriots.
Leonard Fournette, playoff Lenny. Loved this guy, had his autograph for a while, a lot of his rookie cards, started selling stuff off like my Jaguars jersey. I was very excited to have him on the Jaguars team, but that time is over, and not a big fan of holding on to stuff from a player that's not on a team I like anymore. Not that I don't like the Bucs. I was very excited when I saw him go to the Bucs. I thought they were going to win the Super Bowl last year, and they did. And I'm very happy for Leonard Fournette to have a ring and find some success. Ronald Jones is fumbling a lot and just unreliable, and you can't depend on him when he does keep the ball in the hand. So going up against the Patriots, Bill Belichick is going to try and game plan for Brady as much as he can because he knows Brady. And just to be fair here, I do think Brady is going to kind of counter that. I think he's going to come in and he's going to know what Bill thinks his tendencies are, and he's going to talk with Arians, and they're going to find a game plan to beat the Patriots as a revenge game. This is going to be my game of the week. I think it's going to be a back and forth. We're really going to see Brady and Belichick go head-to-head here. The Patriots defense is competent, but they haven't been spectacular. I think they're going to be watching for Brady to do his thing more than they're going to be watching the running game. Leonard Fournette's going to have some sneaky plays in this game, and he can catch the ball. So watch for Leonard Fournette to have his biggest game of the season and be the fantasy star of this game. This is actually going to be my game of the week. This is going to be awesome to watch. I cannot wait.
Raiders at Chargers.
Derek Carr. I know it's crazy to say. We've got, maybe Josh Jacobs will be back. Maybe he won't. We got Justin Herbert, who's been unbelievable with that fucking asshole Mike Williams. Keenan Allen is always a star. I believe Austin Eckler is going to be, back in the mix as a competent running back. He's always getting points in fantasy, both in the receiving game and the rushing game. So we've seen all these guys before. But what I think is being underlooked at the moment is the passing game of the Raiders. And it's because we've seen Carr be so bad and inconsistent over the years, we don't really want to believe it. But guys, at this point, Derek Carr has 6 touchdowns through the air and only 2 interceptions. I know that doesn't sound insane, but he's also got over 1,200 yards passing already this season. In 3 games, he's got 1,200 yards passing. I'm sorry, that's just insane for any quarterback at this point in the season. And I don't see that trend stopping against the Chargers' questionable defense. Justin Herbert and Carr could have a big shootout here on Monday Night Football, and I would not be surprised if Carr puts up another 20 to 25 fantasy points. He's 21 points in our scoring system. I think a little bit more in standard scoring systems. 22 the next week, 18.5 the next week after that. Carr has been a reliable quarterback. I think you're going to see him pop off with more like 25 to 30 this week. Put Carr in your lineups, and if it's not Carr, I think Henry Ruggs needs to be looked at very seriously. And that's going to do it for our Week 4 preview. Rob's going to be back on Saturday to do a podcast with me about our wide receiver positional discussion, just like we're doing for the quarterbacks and running backs. So once again, this is Fantasy R&R. This is your host, Ryan. I'll see you next time.